Okay, in today's session, we're really going to be trying to wrap up the course so far and take a bit of a look forward about what might be next. So we're looking at this issue of the future of integrated guidance. How's it going to look in the future? And so some of the key ideas that we've really been trying to address throughout the course so far is that integrated guidance should support career learning, that it should make use of multiple technologies and approaches, it should use an instructional design approach, and it should take a co-careering stance. And we'll be coming back to all of those things as we go through. So given all the technologies that we've given you, given all the approaches that we've given you, what might be the next things that you might want to know about? Well, one of the things that I would say is I'm always quite careful with predictions. I don't think I can always tell what's going to happen next. So what I'm really going to present to you today is some things that already exist. This is not far future stuff. It's stuff that already exists, but perhaps we're not using routinely in education and guidance. And we're going to think about what some of the implications are for them. So I'm going to address these 6 main topics: learning spaces, mobile learning, game-based learning, wearables, control over data, and then the changing aims for education. And I'm not going to say a lot about each of them. I'm just going to really try and give you a taste so that you can go off and investigate further in the future. So let's start with the issue of learning spaces. So learning spaces are traditionally designed for the transmission of content. So we stand at the front of the lecture theatre and we talk to people and they write our information down and they don't talk back too much. But now we can transmit information in so many other ways. We can use videos like the one that I'm recording now for that. Then it seems kind of a bit of a waste of time to do all of that in the lecture hall. So we need to then think about what kind of spaces might facilitate different kinds of learning. Perhaps ones that make more use of both the digital environment, but also when we bring learners together, of the opportunity for interaction. So spaces should be flexible, they should be inspiring to people, they should be supportive of effective teaching and learning, and also make effective use of the possibilities of digital tools. And we also should make the opportunity to involve users and the wider community and link with other learning places. And that's, I think, really powerful for career learning, because what we're trying to do in career learning is really build people's networks, build their social capital, get them to learn about people who are perhaps outside of educational environments. So in terms of your position, you can audit your current learning spaces, think about what kind of digital integration is possible, think about what can be changed, but also try and always ask the question, why am I using this space? Why am I using this classroom? Would it be better to do something online, or would it be better perhaps to do something in some other kind of environment? Perhaps take students out, show them around, use digital connectivity for other purposes. And of course, you always want to be thinking about how you might influence future design and development of learning spaces to try and make them more fit for purpose for the kind of integrated guidance that we're doing. Moving on to mobile learning. Mobile learning is very powerful. We've all got now many mobile learning devices, so our phones, tablets, and so on. And mobile learning, I think, has a number of real advantages. It puts learning into a specific context. We can take our phone out, we can use it to investigate things that we see. We can do learning in ways that are not dependent on just being in one single place. And one of the ways that we do that is we augment reality with virtual information. So virtual simulations overlay and interact with physical locations, perhaps telling us what we're seeing, helping us to think about it more. We can also contribute to the creation of shared learning resources. So I'm going to talk about this a bit more, but we can send both ourselves and learners can use mobile devices to find new stuff out, but also make it available to others. And it places an adaptive learning toolkit in our hands. So through all the apps we've got, we can put an app that gives us a compass, a flashlight, some kind of measurement instrument, a distance, some way of measuring distance. We can do all of these things with our phones and many more. So it's worth thinking about what tools are out there that might support the kind of learning aims that you've got. And finally, I think it allows learners to take much more ownership of their learning if they can do it on their mobile devices. So this key thing about mobile learning is that a mobile device is not just a receiver of information. We don't just take information. We also can broadcast or share information through it. We can take photos, take videos, and then share it with learners in our groups and encourage learners to share it with each other. And if you think about what we've been doing on this course, we've really encouraged you to share a lot of your experiences and resources and so on. And mobile learning really extends that and makes that more possible. We also might want to think about game-based learning. So game-based learning is the integration of learning aims into some kind of game or simulation. It's become particularly important because of online gaming, which offers lots of opportunities for learning. But game-based learning is not only an online thing. It can operate in many ways and, for example, integrate with the kind of mobile learning that we've just been talking about. This is a really nice video that introduces the basic principles of game-based learning, so it's worth having a look at afterwards, but and having a think about where it might be useful to you. I also linked you to this paper, which gives you some evidence on game-based learning, particularly aimed at schools, but also, I think, relevant elsewhere. And one of the things that it says is that game-based learning is not always simple. It's not an easy option. It requires quite a lot of thinking about on the behalf of the teacher or careers professional. As a teacher or careers professional, you really want to spend time thinking about how you're going to set up game-based learning, and then thinking about how also you're going to participate in game-based learning. So what is your role in the game? Another thing that it really emphasizes is that game-based learning should be actually well integrated. It shouldn't just be a game and a bit of learning. The learning needs to be built right into the heart of the game. And again, that seems to be very appropriate for career learning, which really encourages people to think about, experiential learning. And if we can do some of that through simulation, then that's, really powerful. It also makes the distinction between gamification, where we might use elements of games. So, for example, giving people scores or badges if they participate in asking questions or submit things early or whatever. Those kinds of things which encourage us to behave in certain ways can be powerful tools, but they're not really game-based learning unless they're actually, really using a genuine game and building learning into that game. Moving on, we might look at wearables. So wearables have a number of forms. The ones that we're probably most common with are these sort of wrist bracelets. But essentially, it's any technology which can be worn on or even in the body as an implant or accessory. And really what we're talking about is extending the kind of potential of mobile learning. So it can be used for a number of things like behavior and location tracking, data collection. It also might have a role for parental involvement if you're working with young people, supporting reflection, and classroom management and control. And all of these things are really bound up with the capacity of a wearable to collect behavior and collect information about the person who is actually wearing it. And that obviously raises some ethical issues. And in fact, the ethical issues that are raised by that really relate to everything that we've been doing in this course, and particularly to the sorts of technologies that I've just introduced you to. All technologies generate data. All technologies give us data about individuals and their behavior. And so it's really important that we think about who owns that data and what can they do with it. Now, as a teacher or as a careers professional, this data can be hugely valuable because we can see who's engaging with their course, what time they're engaging, how long they're engaging for, what resources and materials they're using, and all of those kinds of things. Now, that's really powerful in terms of our understanding of how our learners are learning. But it raises a bunch of ethical issues. Who has access to the learner's data? To what degree do you need to inform users that their data is being collected? Do you need their permission? Where should it be stored? Who owns it? What about if you misinterpret the data? Is anybody got a chance to check what you're thinking about it? And is there an ethical obligation to act in response to data that we have? So, for example, if we find out that nobody is watching a particular resource, do we have to do something about that? Do we have to change the resource? Even if you don't ever look at it, all of your integrated learning, all of your integrated guidance processes are collecting data, and you need to think about the implications of that. I'm not going to go into the details of the GDPR laws and the various other kind of regulations that sit around data protection, but I think there's sort of three basic principles. If you've got data from learners, you need to have their permission, it needs to be accurate, and they need to be able to retrieve it if they want. That's the kind of fundamental principles of data management. So you need to think about this issue of data and what you're doing with it. Finally, I'm going to just say a little bit about the aims of education and particularly how they might be changing. So as we move forward, there are lots of things that education is asked to do. It's asked to contribute to environmental issues, to economic and social issues. But as educators, we need to think, how do we really position ourselves? What do we really believe the aims of education are? Are they individual or collective? Are they local or global? Are they about ensuring change or managing or ensuring continuity? So where do you stand on these issues? What do you believe education is for, and how do you believe it might be useful? That's really important. And I think the integrated guidance that you provide, you need to have thought these things through and think about how what you do fits into it. I've provided some references here, which hopefully will be useful. But just to summarize, I think there are lots of new ideas and technologies. Many of these seem to have many implications for education, but they're not always fully clear. It's important to think through how new technologies might be incorporated into integrated guidance, but it's also important to retain a critical edge. Not all of these things will live up to their promise, and not all of them are actually going to be good for you or for learners. And so be prepared to say no to some technologies that you think are not helpful. Ultimately, I think they're all in service of what you think education and guidance is for, and that's something that you need to think about before you start picking technologies. So finally, I think I'd like to just give you some final contact details for me. Thank you for participating in the course, and I hope that you've enjoyed it.